Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome. This is How to Build an Engaging Alexa Skill, and it's part one of a four-part series of Cake Week.
Delicious.
All right.
It's a little early for cake. But that's okay.
Yeah, that's true. It's still, it's almost lunchtime, so.
Ooh, don't say that. Don't start that.
All right, so my name is Justin Jeffress. Follow me on Twitter. My name is handle there is Sleepy Developer, and I'm very happy to be sharing the stream with Alison Atwell. So.
Hi, I'm Alison. I am a vui designer in Alexa Skills Kit, helping partners build engaging skills, doing exactly this.
Nice, awesome. So this is great. So she's going to be able to critique the cakewalk design and tell me how terrible it is. All right, so you can follow along. Today we have, this coincides with a course that we created to help teach you to learn how to build engaging Alexa skills. And the link, you can find that here at alexa.design/cake-walk. And I'll give you a few moments to navigate to that in your browser. But when you do, that will take you to this page here. And you can see we've got a nice little link. Oh, hi, Oxygen Box. Yes, let them eat cake. So you can see here, this takes us to a nice little landing page with some table of contents. And what we're going to be covering today is designing the vui part. So you can go back and, on your own, read through the why develop skills with Alexa. But if you go through here, we're going to learn about what voice user interface is. We're going to talk about situational design. And so, this is a great way for you to, follow along and, come back and refer to this material afterward. So make sure you bookmark this page. And so then we'll also be covering this section here on how to create the skill. So we're going to be really heavily discussing, Alison and I, the design for Cakewalk, and then at the end we'll actually build the first interaction with the skill. So it's not going to be the complete thing, but that's what we're going to be doing over the next 4 days. So by Friday we'll have Cakewalk working completely. So that's how we're going to do that. And so I've been talking about this thing called Cakewalk, and I know some of you are probably kind of getting a little bit hungry. So what is Cakewalk? So Cakewalk is a skill that celebrates your birthday. You tell it your birthday, and it counts down the number of days until your next one. And then if you interact with the skill on your birthday, it gives you a nice happy birthday message.
That's nice of it.
Yeah.
Actually, it reminds me of the NORAD Santa tracker skill, where we actually did last year for a little bit of a refresh of the skill that everybody loved so much the year before. We did a December 25th countdown. So on December 1st, if you started asking the skill, Alexa would start telling you how many days were left until Christmas. That's cool. Which probably drove parents nuts because we already knew that children like to ask over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So this is great. This is a great concept.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm glad you approve. The vui designer approves. All right. So let's take a look. One thing that is a great, whenever you're building a skill, it's good to understand how the system works. A lot of people who are starting out, maybe this might be your first time building a skill, you might be thinking what do I need to know in order to build a skill? Do I need to know about natural language understanding? Do I need to know about AI and machine learning in order to be able to build an Alexa experience? And I guess the short answer is no, you don't. You don't really have to know much at all about how AI and how machine learning and how natural language understanding works. It's good to have a basic understanding, but you're not actually going to be writing these routines yourself. So this graphic here demonstrates or shows how it works. And so when the user speaks, the wake word, Alexa wakes up and starts listening to what the user says and uploads that voice information into the cloud, where speech recognition, machine learning, natural language understanding starts to work and tries to figure out what the user said, and it uses what's called an interaction model that you provide that dictates how to interpret what was said. So you're actually not writing these routines, you're providing training data that changes the behavior. So it's really cool. You're actually able to leverage the power of AI. without actually writing any AI yourself. And so then it creates a JSON response and sends that to your service. And so typically, like, you'll want to use something like AWS Lambda as your backend, but as long as it's over HTTPS and you can read and return JSON, you can use whatever you want for your backend service. We're going to be using Alexa hosted today. And then your skill sends a response back, and the Alexa service uses the text and converts it into speech, and then that's what makes Alexa speak. And you can also pass back visual directives and use something called APL, which is Alexa Presentation Language, to basically enhance the experience. But these are voice-first experiences, so you don't really want to rely so much on the visual aspects, because there might not be a guarantee that they have a screen. So.
Yeah, most of our customers still don't have a screen device, despite the fact that we have several on the market and probably more coming. We also have other devices from other manufacturers that may or may not have screens. You may or may not be able to target those, but you can always rely on the voice response being there.
Right, and even if you do have a screen, there might be a case where, say, you're in the kitchen and you're doing something with your hands and you don't have the ability to look at the screen while
Right.
you're interacting
We're,
with it.
We're not always, if you think about interacting with your family or anybody else in your household, you're not always looking at them when they're talking to them. You can't always read their responses, and you only ever look at them if they're, if you need some more information.
Right.
So.
Right. Cool. So, now that we understand, the basic of how it works, let's talk about designing a skill, right? So let's talk about, before we get into designing a skill, what we don't want to do, which is using flowcharts.
Right. Everybody needs some kind of architecture. Once you know what you're going to build, and we know what we're going to build here, you don't need it so much. So it's nice to say, well, my skill is going to do these few things. You're going to get to them in this way, and they're going to connect here. But that only goes so far, because I'm not going to speak these exact things that are on screen. The situation is not always going to work this way. And if I say something that the skill didn't anticipate, or actually just wanted me, it was going to ask me, 10 steps down the line, it should be able to handle that a little bit more naturally than forcing me through a menu. And I think we have some examples of that.
Right.
Where I've created a flowchart, and now my intent as a designer becomes writing to the flowchart and forcing the person through the flow rather than accepting what they're saying naturally and handling it.
Right.
This is not a very user-forward way of thinking about design, is doing this flowchart.
Right, and I think, there's a natural proclivity for people to want to go to flowcharts in the beginning, because they think, oh, okay, if the user says X, then I need to do Y in response to that. If they say Z, then I'm going to do, this other thing in response to that. So people think, oh, okay, it's a natural, way how to express that. But what ends up happening, like Alison said, is you're not focused on the conversation anymore. You're focused on drawing the little arrows from the different things that connect things together. But voice and conversation isn't scripted. Like,
Right.
Alison and I didn't script out the conversations that we have on a daily basis, or it ebbs and flows. Like, I say something and then she reacts, and then she says something and then I react, and
Right.
so it just people are going to interact with your skill in the same way that they would interact with a human conversational partner. And so part of what you're doing when you're designing a voice user interaction is figuring out how best to mimic that human behavior between conversational partners.
Right, and once you start going down the flowchart route, you are unable to handle complexity. And when you try to layer in complexity, which is fantastic for being contextual to whoever I'm speaking to, you start ending up with boxes all over the screen of like 20 if-then checks before you surface some kind of response, and your flowchart becomes, if you print it out, it's going to be taller than you, and then nobody's going to want to read it, and probably only you really know the way that you intended it to be read and you intended for the system to behave. So once you start noodling a flowchart, it's probably time to stop and start writing.
Right. And I think, another thing that happens is if you you end up replicating a lot of things over and over again, because
Right.
it's like, oh, I hit this condition, and the results could be these other things that I have over here in this part of the flow chart. So I need to bring them over here. So then, like, you're copying and pasting
Right,
conditions
or
and
drawing
different
really
things.
wacky lines all the way around. Like that's a sign it's time to step away, and you're ready to think more about the conversation. You probably have a really good idea at that point of what you're going to build, how the basic flow is going to go down, but then you're going to break that really quickly.
Right. Yes. So again, flowcharts aren't conversational. You want to avoid them because they're not going to lead down a path towards having a great conversational experience. So just checking the chat here, I see we got Startup Santa. Hello. Thanks for tuning in. All right. So what we want to do is, instead of focusing on flowcharts, which isn't very user-focused, it's not very customer-driven, you want to start with where it all begins, which is the interaction. So you want to start with the conversation. And so if you start with the conversation and work backward, it looks like they want us to increase the audio volume.
We might be too quiet.
Let's see. I hope this works. All right, how's that? Is that better?
Testing,
there's a little
testing.
There's a little bit of a delay from when they see us talking, and so
Gotcha.
yeah. Hi, Michael Bender. All right, so hopefully that fixed the audio. We're going to continue on. All right, so we want to start with the conversation here. So what we've done here is we've created, all right, good, audio's good. Thank you, Michael. So here's the cakewalk skill is a very simple interaction, and but instead of starting with a flowchart, we started with the conversation. So let's take a look at this conversation. So which part do you want to play?
I'll be the user.
Okay, cool.
Since it's almost my birthday.
Oh, nice. All right, so
Alexa, open Cakewalk.
hello, welcome to Cakewalk. What is your birthday?
7/23/87.
Ooh, thanks. I'll remember you were born 7/23/87. Actually, I should probably repeat that and say July, what was it again? 23rd,
July 23rd,
1987.
Sorry, I went
Okay.
off script there.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I like that.
Which the customer is going to
Yes,
do.
that's a really good demonstration about how we have a script here, and even though we scripted this out as what we call our happy path, which is the way how it's going to go, without any deviations, it's good to show that this is a guide. It's not the final, like, it must be this way, because users are they're gonna have different birthdays. Not everyone's going to say they were born on that same day that's in the sample, and the way that they say it is also going to be different as well.
Right. I was thinking back to, so on an IVR phone system, when somebody asks your birthday, like when you're calling your bank or something annoying like that, they ask your birthday. I always want to get it over as quickly as possible. So 7/23/87. Mother's maiden name is. I want to get ahead of them. So users do, and you actually find this age difference in people with experience with technology is sometimes they will answer in this very natural way, like, I was born in July. What are you going to do with that?
Right.
And then, or it was me who's used to annoying voice systems. Actually, sometimes I say 7/23/87. Somebody else might say July 23rd, 1987.
Right. Or someone might
exactly how we thought they would, but I did not.
Right. They could give you, the month. They could give you the month and the day. They could give you the year. Like, there's, there's no. And so in a conversation, what would happen is, you would have to follow up and be like, okay, great. I understand you were born in July. What day in July? I need to know some more information.
Maybe I'm sensitive about my age and I refuse, and I just say July 23rd. And I'm not going to answer your question.
Right, yeah. So those are all different things that you should consider. And so what we've done here is we started with our happy path, and we have shown that this is what's going to happen in the ideal situation where all three of the things that we want, the month, day, and year, have been given to us. So that's what this represents. And so what Alison and I just demonstrated with, giving it in a different way, or talking about how you only give just the month, those are what you're going to have to come back for later in your design and figure out how you're going to handle those. And we're going to use situational design to do that. So
now, if we were to draw a chart for that, I would spend about 15 minutes. I would open up PowerPoint or whatever your preferred mock-up program is. I would draw a bunch of boxes. Did he say this? Did he say this? Did he say that? Whereas we're going to show a different way of doing that that isn't so inhumane.
Yes. So let's take a look. Oh, and also you'll notice up here in the script we have birthday unknown. So this is like another indicator for what the situation is. So this is the birthday's unknown, so that means this is the first time the user is interacting with the skill. And so what we've also identified here is we're going to need to remember what their birthday is. Because if you think about it, like when you're having a conversation, you have a shared memory and context. And so, I don't, every time I come up to Alison and say, I'm sorry, what's your name? Who are you?
Yeah.
What do you do here? We don't have to reintroduce ourselves every single time that we meet up. Like,
you might have to remind me of your birthday, though. That's why we have the skill to remember.
Right, right. Well, I don't expect you to remember that. So, so yes, like, with this particular skills job, though, it's to remember the person's birthday and wish them a happy birthday on the day of their birthday. So it's going to need to remember their birthday. We could require the user to give it to them every single time, but that's going to create friction, right? Every time they open up the skill, they have to say the same thing again. And so you might get, like, over time, the person might get, try to get ahead of it and try to say, like you said, 723, 87, like, just really quick. Yeah. So you want to avoid that, like, and the more help you give to the user, the more easier you make it, the more retentive your skill is going to be, because people are going to want to come back because it's just that much easier to use. So, okay, cool. So let's take a look at our other situation here. This is where the birthday is known. So this one's really simple.
Also, it does remember the year.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And so this is another thing, right? Like you can see here in the second, it says, I'll until you're next, and that tells you when you're next, how old you're turning. Some people might be a little sensitive to that, like you alluded to on the previous slide. And so, in that case, like you might want to think about, ways to update the skills so that way maybe have an utterance for like that captures like people who are shy about their age. Be like, oh, I didn't want to know that.
Right. Or if I never gave you the year, maybe we don't even need to follow up and ask for the year. And we have another condition here that's birthday known, year known.
Right.
Birthday known, year unknown.
Right.
I'm just not going to announce your age.
Right. Yeah. That's another way how to design that, and to compensate for people who might be a little bit shy about telling everyone their age. And so for what we've done in the current build for Cakewalk, we have it asking and requiring for the year. But you might want to think about how you would do that, and as part of like extra credit or homework, you can try to figure out how you would make the year be optional. So okay, cool. So let's move on, and I have a question for the audience. In these examples, the first one where the birthday was unknown versus where the birthday was known, who led that conversation? Was it Alexa or was it the customer? And let's see if we can get you guys to answer in the chat. And I see we have a few messages here. Just curious to know, like, Alexa can identify leap year. So I think if you ask Alexa, like, if it's a leap year, I think she'll be able to tell you, which is, I don't know. I've never tried that.
Yeah, she shouldn't tell you your next birthday isn't for 4 years. That's
right.
That shouldn't happen.
Right. If we're doing that's very interesting. When I built the skill, I didn't think about leap years, people who were born on the 29th. So, but yeah, that would be interesting.
To test her knowledge of leap year.
Yeah, we'll have to do something about that. So, all right. So, for those of you, so Oxygen Box said customer. Are you asking from your conversational outline? Yes.
Oh, we can go back.
Yes, we can go back. So yes, we're asking from, well, not just, okay, so please repeat the question. So we want to know who's leading this conversation. And it's not just this conversation, but all conversations with Alexa. So, with other skills as well, who leads? Is it the user saying something and Alexa does something, or is it Alexa says something and the user's doing something? So who leads the conversation? I'll give you guys a few minutes to answer. I know we have a little bit of delay.
Enthusiastic vote for customers.
We do have one really enthusiastic vote. Oh, we got an Alexa. All right. And this Alexa is, actually, Oxygen Box was correct. It is the customer. If you notice here, we've got the customer starting the conversation by saying, Alexa, open Cakewalk. Alexa says something and says, what's your birthday? And the user responds. But, if the user asks the question, what is your birthday? There's no guarantee that the user has to say what their birthday is, right? The interaction for Cakewalk is a very simple interaction, right? It's basically just asking, what the user's birthday is, and then it tells them the number of days until their next one, and then wishes them happy birthday on their birthday. But let's think of a trivia game, and what would happen, let's say there's a couple different options. Like you could play the game, you could practice.
I have a really good example of a trivia. This actually happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
If you read customer reviews of trivia skills, this really drives people insane. Where I ask the question, the answers are let's just call it multiple choice or true false. It's A, B, C, D, true false, and next to those I read the option. Is it A, Georgia, B, Washington, C, Oregon? And then I say C, or I say Oregon. Let's say I say Oregon, and the skill responds with, please answer in numeric form, or please answer A, B, C, D, simply because the person didn't build in the recognition of this is an accepted answer would be C or Oregon or C Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, Alexa really kind of annoyingly enough takes charge and tells me how I'm supposed to answer, even though she just read out all of these options. I couldn't naturally interact with it. So that's a very good example is trivia skills.
Yeah, and then the other thing that it could ask you a question and you could say help, right? And so that wasn't an option. That's not what Alexa gave as one of the options or the skill gave as an option as to say, but you say help and it will hit the help intent. So, one thing to be aware of is when you're conversing with Alexa, it's not like all of your intents become immediately, and we haven't really talked about what intents are, but I guess we'll take that time now. So when you're speaking with the skill, you define utterances and intents. And so an utterance is what the user says, and the intent is the action that's behind those words. So start a quiz, you'll have a start quiz intent. If you have in the Cakewalk example, we have capture birthday intent. But we also have a help intent, we have a stop intent, we have a cancel intent, we also have a launch request, and that's what happens when you open the skill. And so if the skill from the launch request asks the user what their birthday is, and then they say help, what's going to happen is the help intent is going to be the intent that gets triggered. And so even though we asked them for their birthday, they said help, and it's a valid option, and so that's what's going to be presented next, which you can kind of see that it's unlike a web form where you can restrict the user from sending or submitting that data until the data that they need to submit is in the exact proper format that it needs to be in, and all of the required fields are there. In voice, you don't have that luxury. People can leave things out, like we demonstrated before with the birthday, where they just give the month, or they just give the month and day, or just the day. So you have to think about things a little bit differently with voice. So yes, so in this case, it's Alexa that's not leading the customer, it's the customer that's leading the conversation. So if we go back, we can sort of represent each one of these call and response between the user and Alexa as turns. So you can see here, we've broken our first birthday unknown conversation into the first turn and the second turn. And you can also see that we've, drawn a little box around the birthday unknown to mark it as the situation. And so this is how we, figure out how to build these situational design pieces. You can think of each part of situational design as a turn. So each call and response is a turn, and you have a situation for each. And what's interesting about this, and we'll see it on the next slide, is like here we have our birthday unknown, but in the second situation, or the second turn, we actually know the birthday at that point. So on the piece of paper, when we're writing this out, we don't actually know that we've got the situation has updated until we've finished. Like we'd have to like write it down at the bottom here that, hey, we know it, but we're gonna show you a method of how to represent each one of these turns, and then we'll be able to show, okay, and this is the situation at that turn. So you can see here, we have these cards that represent our situation, or sorry, our turn. And so we have our utterance, which is open cakewalk. We have our situation, which is birthday unknown. And then we have our response. And our response is split up into two parts. We have the, hello, welcome to cakewalk. And then we have our prompt, which is our question. And, Alison, would you like to explain why we split those two things up?
Our response and our prompt?
Yes.
That also has to do with the user situation. So sometimes, depending on the situation, I might want to give a different response or a different prompt, but one of those things might be the same for a situation. I can't think of it might be, maybe like a trivia example would be a better one. Here, I can't really think of a reason we would differ those unless we were to do something really fancy where I remember multiple people's birthdays. And so maybe it's a situation where I have or have not identified the person, and I need to write a different response, but maybe not the prompt. So there are a lot of cases where you might want to vary those based on the situation.
Cool. Yes. So, another thing that I was thinking of is like, say you have a skill that allows you to do shopping or something, and you have like a shopping cart, and your situation might be the shopping cart's empty, and the user says, check out. It's like, well, you don't have anything in your shopping cart. So at that point, what you would have to do, that would be your situation. It's like, nothing in the cart. So your response might be, to say, hey, you don't have anything in the shopping cart, and then your prompt might be different if they had something in the shopping cart. So your response would be, oh, great, I'll get you checked out, and then your prompt would be, to help start the process of checking out. So, you can use the situation to change how those responses are going to be. So let's take a look at how these cards are built out. So you can see here, we've got the utterance, our situation, and our response and prompt. So
notice the prompt is always after the response, which is another really good reason to separate these mentally, if not physically on the card, is when we ask a question and then keep talking, we actually see a lot of errors because somebody's best cue that Alexa has asked them for information, and to kind of move them out of passive listening to active listening is asking them a question, and they tend to answer those questions immediately. But if I start answering a question and then Alexa keeps speaking and then opens the stream, maybe she didn't catch what I said at all, maybe she only caught the last part of it and it throws an error. So this is also a really good reminder to ask the question, i.e. the prompt, after you deliver the response. Address what the person said first, and then follow up with the prompt.
Right. Yes. So, that's a really, really good point. Sometimes people will forget to add a prompt to the end, and then the microphone is sitting there open, and it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Right, and the customer isn't really sure what to say if they maybe didn't glean from the response what other information you were seeking. So for a really bad example of this happening might be, I ask for your birthday, and Alexa, I say July 23rd, and she says, I need the year, or something very short, or I've got July 23rd, and then opens the stream. And I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that.
Right. It's like, yes.
Okay, thank you. Or, even if she did say, I need the year, I've got July 23rd, I'm not entirely clear do I need to provide that information if I'm one of those sensitive people, or she should just ask, July 23rd, in what year? So that I know explicitly what's being asked of me.
Right. And, I don't know if you've ever been, you've called a support line, and it says, hey, I can understand complete sentences, what would you like? And it's like, what? Right. I don't know.
Something too open-ended questions. I mean, if you have a really robust skill that was really meant to drill down into something after you've asked an open-ended question, there's this really great skill. There's a skill that did this really well, and a lot of these skills are based on chatbots. They start out being based on chatbots, so they knew a lot about what people were likely to ask. They had a lot of data because the chatbot was a few years old. But Ask My Vet, you would just say, what kind of animal do you have? And they accepted as much as hamsters and all kinds of stuff like that. And then what's the problem? And she literally says, oh, poor pup, what seems to be the problem? And I go, there's so many things, what do I say? Whereas they could have pushed me down this menu, but they actually had a robust enough skill. If I gave this constellation of symptoms, they actually picked out the most serious one and drilled it down into that. Whereas maybe a really simple skill, if you were to ask an open-ended question and I responded with something you didn't anticipate because you asked an open-ended question, the skill might just throw an error. Even though it's capable of doing quite a lot, it gave me no indication of what I should be saying.
Right. Yep. So, that's something to think about. And if you do give open-ended questions, that's going to make more work for you because you're going to have to figure out what they meant and piece that together. And for those of you who are new to building Alexa skills, you don't get access to the full text or the full audio that was spoken. You can only capture small pieces, which are called slots. And so you, as part of the utterance, you can slot them out, and actually we can point those out here. In this particular example, we've underlined them. So you can see here when the user says, I was born November 7th, 1983, in that case, we've got the red underlines under November 7th and 1983 to denote those are the slots that we're going to capture. Those are the things that we need. And so you don't get all of that information.
Right, and this ensures she's also not going to respond with, I'm sorry, I was born November is not a valid month. What month were you born? Really silly stuff like that. She discards what is not needed and fills the slots that she needs.
Right, so yes, your skills backend would just get these 3 slot values that you created, and you can name them whatever you want. So in the case of Cakewalk, we've named them month, day, and year. And this also brings up another possible way that the person could, answer. Maybe their birthday is, next Tuesday. So when they're asked, when were you born? They might say, I was born next Tuesday or next week. Or, there's various ways that they could answer. And there's different slot types that you can apply to your slot values, and that helps the ASR, which is automatic speech recognition, to figure out what the user said. And so it's part of that training data that you provide. And so with the Amazon.date slot type, which we're not using here, it can capture things like next Tuesday, or I think you can say 2 weeks from now too.
Yes.
I'm not sure. You can do some pretty robust.
2 days before the day after tomorrow actually works.
Wow. Wow, I haven't tested that one.
Right. It works.
That's crazy.
That's one of the first things that I did.
What was that one again? Could you repeat that?
2 days before the day after tomorrow.
2 days
Which
before.
Is today.
Okay, wow.
That works.
Wow.
If you
That's
ask
amazing.
Alexa, generally for a date,
wow.
when is 2 days before the day after tomorrow?
That's really awesome. I love that. So yes, if you want to use the Amazon date slot, you can use that to capture these funny, interesting, intricate ways of saying today.
And you'll delight some jerk like me trying to break it, so. Because that's what I was trying to do.
Right. And so, when we built that cakewalk, we decided to do it with the different slots to represent things because we figured that people, it was a design decision, we figured that people would give them more broken up. But the date option would be a little bit more of a complication because now what you'd have to do is you'd create another utterance with another slot that is the date, and then what you'd have to do is you'd have to see, okay, which format did they give it to me, and did they give me the date? Okay, yes they did. Then we don't need to ask for the individual slots. If they didn't, then you have to figure out, like, say they just gave you the month. Okay, now we have to follow up and get the day. If we were going to ignore the date, because maybe the person that we're speaking with is sensitive about their age, we might just stop it there. So, that's sort of food for thought. If you're going to go through and build the cakewalk skill yourself following the course, you can try to think about how are ways that you could improve the skill. At the end of the course, there's a food for thought section. And so we raise that question to you there, like maybe try adding the date slot as a thing to capture. And then that way you can capture more ways that people could interact with your skill. Okay. Let's see, we also here, if you'll notice, when we have our response back, we say, thanks, I'll remember that you were born. We repeat back the date. And so we're doing that with a implicit confirmation, which is different from an explicit confirmation.
Yes. Here, we're pretty confident in working with dates, especially if you use the Amazon date slot. And so it's more times than not, it would be annoying to hear that was November 7th, 1983, correct? Because we know in most cases that it will be correct. We can pretty well guess. So we've erred on the side of reducing friction and not making somebody explicitly confirm, yes, that's my birthday. It's only 2 turns to correct it, so that's not a very high-risk error to make. You want to do explicit confirmations either when you're really not confident that you've asked a question that's going to result in a response that's going to be easy to interpret for whatever reason. You might want to do the explicit confirmation, but what it's more important for is cases where there's a higher consequence for the error, like transfer $400 to Justin. That was $4,000 to Justin, correct? I would like explicit confirmation.
Confirm, yes.
So that's a time where
that was an implicit confirmation.
Builds trust for me to hear that's 4,000, yes, and I go, no, that was not what I said.
So yes.
To hear then, I've transferred 4,000 to Justin, have a nice day. That would be a little bit disturbing, even if it were correct, I might add. So here, explicit confirmation, not totally necessary. We're really confident we're going to get it right.
Right.
And if we get it wrong, it's not difficult for the customer to fix.
And one thing you'll also notice here is we don't have a prompt. So what does that mean?
I would assume that means you close the skill.
Yes.
Hopefully you're not opening the stream again.
Yes. So in that case, with situational design, we have our response. It's built of 2 parts. So we have, the prompt, and then we have the response, and then we have the prompt, which is where we're asking the question. And so if we leave the prompt off out of the response, then that means we're closing the session, and so the skill is going to exit at that point. So, if we were doing a banking app and Alison was, going to transfer me 4,000, I would do an implicit confirmation and close the skill, right?
I'm sure you would. That actually might be, we should check our certification guidelines. That might not actually even be allowed.
It probably isn't.
Always check the certification guidelines on that stuff.
Right, yeah. So in that case, we would want an explicit confirmation and a prompt, yes.
Yes, please.
All right, my bank account isn't saying yes, please. Well, it's saying yes, please to 4,000.
Right.
All right. So yes, what we can do now with the situational design cards is we can string them together into creating different storyboards that represent the entire conversation from end to end that took place between our skill and the user. And so you essentially, are building these conversational cards. So unlike the flowchart where you're focused on lines and shapes and graphs, with situational design, you're focused on the conversation, and you can build these things together. And then if you're in the middle of building out one of your scenarios and you come across where there's something missing, then that means, oh, I have to go create another card to handle this. So I need to know what the utterance is, I need to know what the situation is, and then how do I respond to it.
So someone like me might look at this finished deck of cards and go, what if I'm 101 years old and I only gave you the last 2 digits of the year? What happens then? If we don't have a card for that, we need to make one.
Right, and then once you've made that, then you can slot that in. And then if you ever hit that situation again, you already have a card that covers it. So that's one of the really nice things about this particular way of designing and creating your design for your interaction rather than using a flowchart. I also see some comments here in the
We have some questions on what template we're using.
Yes. So yes, we are using a template for Adobe XD, and I saw somebody asking about Adobe XD. So this is actually the template here. I don't know if we've made this particular one available. There is one available somewhere out there, and I don't know what the URL is.
For a template?
Yeah.
This template specifically?
I think we have made
yes,
this available.
It has been shared, and we can follow up on that for
Okay.
sure. And this might not be a bad one to share, actually,
Yes.
with the materials online.
Yeah, and what I can do is, I'm streaming tomorrow too. Unfortunately, Alison won't be on the stream with me tomorrow. It'll just be me, myself, and I. But what I'll do is at the beginning of that stream, I'll track down the situational design template link and share it in the thing. You can also follow me on Twitter. Let's see, there we go. You can follow me on Twitter at Sleepy Developer, and I'll tweet out the template for the situational design document, or not the document, the template. So you can use that. And then also, while we're here, make sure you hit that follow button. We always stream quite regularly during the week. We also do office hours every Tuesday at 1 p.m. So actually, immediately following this, I'm actually going to be handling the office hours as well. So from 1 to 2. So yeah, follow us. You'll get notified when we go live. And let's get back to our discussion here. Okay.
And you don't have to use the XD template either, especially when you're in early stages. I often just print some. I have some printable ones with some extra big fonts so people can see them across a conference table. Often I will just print them out and have people write things. Sometimes they're things that I haven't covered. I might slam down a stack of storyboards and say, okay, let's break this. It usually happens within a few seconds, the first round. What we like about XD is you can go into prototype mode and actually draw some lines, not too many though, and create a prototype that's voice enabled. So you can actually demonstrate your happy path, and it will show all of those storyboards, and the XD voice will speak all of the lines. But you can really use anything. I've mocked them up in PowerPoint, whatever you choose.
Right, and one nice thing about XD is you can actually copy and paste your basically your templates from here into PowerPoint, and they work. So like that's what I did here. For each one of these, I just copied it straight out of XD and pasted it into the PowerPoint presentation. So when I discovered I could do that, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, so if you have anybody you're working with, these are easily shareable. You can create PDFs out of them. If you have a designer you're working with, it's just a straight copy-paste from any Adobe program that they might be working on mock-ups. So you can include your GUI mock-ups on these. Pretty versatile, pain-free interface.
Yeah. Cool. So now let's dive into our XD template. We've come to the end of our, almost nearly the end of our PowerPoint deck here. But what I've done through here is I've created a bunch of different, storyboards to represent different scenarios. And so what we'll do is we'll walk through our scenario here for when we have we don't have the birthday, it's the first interaction, and we can also have this other template here that we can point out what we dive into. But so you can see here, this is the case where they're first interacting with the skill, we don't know their birthday, and so we've moved into these different cards. So we have, open cakewalk as the utterance, our situation is unknown, the birthday is unknown, and we say, hello, welcome to cakewalk, and we ask when they were born. And then the user comes back and says, I was born November 7th, 1983. At that point, the birthday is known, so then we come back and say that and give them the implicit confirmation, and we exit the skill. We also have a little bit of flavor on the end here where we say, see you later, alligator, to let them know that we've closed the skill.
Yeah.
So, and one nice thing that you could do, and I know, Alison, you typically will mark these, I think, with what, a box? How is
Usually
it that you did
I
it?
will bracket anything
Yes.
that I want to vary over time.
Mhm.
And so if every time I open the skill it said see you later alligator, the novelty of that might wear off pretty quickly, as well as any other dad joke maybe. So that's what I'm going to want to vary, and I'll mark that for developers. I'm not going to create another card for all of those things because I might write 100 of them. I'll probably keep that on a database elsewhere, but I will call out that this is something we should vary. It might also be bracketed around dynamic information like somebody's score or something like that. That also helps people understand how much of the dialogue in a full skill is dynamic. So when they're making a decision about what parts, if they're using other voices, what parts might be other TTS voices like our Amazon Poly voices, what parts might be Alexa's voice, and what parts might be voiceover recording. Because when we do a voiceover recording, we don't want a voiceover actor sitting there for hours reading every possible scenario. And so a lot of times somebody will see all those brackets all over a document and go, oh, this is going to be more efficient for Alexa to read all of these parts. And let's keep the voiceover, in these parts that aren't dynamic. So it helps people understand what kind of data they're wrestling with as well.
Right, yeah, and if you were creating a game or something, you would have a lot of variation there,
Right.
depending upon, what the situation is, what their inventory is, how far they've progressed in the game, their abilities, all
Right.
these different things. And so, yeah, having those brackets can really help cut down on the number of cards that you need. And again, it's you can keep creating cards for handling the user utterances, but it makes sense to use these brackets for what Alexa's going to say back, because again, it's you're not capturing the variance of what at this point you've created those cards to capture the different variants of what the user is going to say. This is varying what Alexa's going to say back.
Yeah, there's not necessarily a context or a certain kind of utterance that would directly relate to which variant we used. Is how I like to think of it. So see you later alligator, I can replace that with almost any kind of salutation, and it would make sense no matter how the conversation went. There are a few instances where it might be annoying and you might be careful about including those. So if I get an error and it says, nice chatting with you, maybe that's not so nice. Maybe it wasn't actually nice chatting with you. So I would be careful about varying too much or including such a huge breadth that you might deliver something inappropriate to the context, but these should be not context dependent.
Right, yes. So then you'll also notice here we have this other piece here that is the same utterance, but you'll notice it's a little bit wider, and there's this little box over here that's in gray, and you can kind of see there's a little bit more detailed information here. So you can see we've got a logic box, and then we have a response with slots and markup, and then we have a prompt marked up. So what is this stuff that we're doing here? So you can see here we have save year, month, and day into Amazon S3. So at this point what we're doing is we're bridging the gap between design and implementation. So these are instructions on okay, now that we have the birthday, it's known, we need to remember it. And so this is our way that what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to save this into S3. And so people may be asking, well, why not DynamoDB? The reason why we're using S3 in this situation is because we're going to be using Alexa hosted, and Alexa hosted doesn't support DynamoDB, so we're going to be using Amazon S3, and on that would be Thursday's stream, we're going to be walking through how you would save into S3. And one of the great things about how the SDK has been built, we're going to be using the Node.js SDK, is that it's object-based, and so the code that you do to to save to the persistent storage is going to be the same no matter what. So it's the same code to do the save and the read for S3 or DynamoDB. The only thing that's different is how you instantiate the object. So in one you create an S3 object, and the other you create a Dynamo object, and then those objects know how to talk to the different services that they're configured for. And so that's why the code can be the same, like the function call. You call a function, and then the object knows how to talk to its corresponding service. So we'll dive into that on Thursday. So, okay, so that's the logic part for here. And then we also have this response where we have our speak tag here, and we're not doing anything special with SSML. But if we wanted to specify and put our SSML into here, we could. And Alison, I know you've got a lot to say about SSML.
Yeah, what is SSML for the uninitiated? It is Speech Synthesis Markup Language. And on the developer portal, we can share that link. It has a list of supported speech tags. There are a lot of them. SSML is used in other voice services as well, and this is just a standard language for marking up how Alexa is supposed to speak different things. This could be as simple as two words that are spelled the same, but they are pronounced differently, but I want her to say a specific thing, like live live, spelled the same, sound different. It's really embarrassing if she doesn't use the right one. This might also be creating emphasis. If you're playing a game and you just put in kind of straight TTS that says, good job, you got this many points, Alexa might actually sound like a jerk reading that without any emphasis, like, good job, you got 4 points. Or we had this issue in like sports, good job, your Seahawks won. It sounded kind of snarky because she was just saying there was no emphasis. Good job, your Seahawks won, or hooray, the Seahawks won. There's also speech cons, so things when people love to make her shout booyah, all of those nifty things that we've had a separate voiceover recording done just because it sounds too computerized when we try to achieve it with SSML. Those have been recorded separately, and you can use those, and she'll say booyah very enthusiastically. If you try to recreate that in SSML, if somebody's feeling up to it, it just can't be done. You can't replicate that human mouth noise with SSML, right. But you can get kind of close. There are a number of reasons you might be using it, so that's something that's really fun to play with if you ever have the inclination to do that, which I would highly suggest. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun, and it's there's a balance though, because it can turn into a black hole. Yep. Because like you tweak how she sounds speaking one word, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, the other
rest
word
sound awful.
Yeah. So then you have to go and like tweak all the other things, and so
I would start with kind of your high value messages first, like your welcome message, make that sound really nice and polished. If she's speaking a brand name, I work with a lot of brands. If that brand name isn't in the system, we can make that happen, but you might have to spell it out phonetically in a phoneme tag. One really funny example was National Geographic. They have tons of skills, tons of excellent kids games, but if you just enter National Geographic into straight TTS, National Geographic. Because geographic is not a word in the English language, it turns out. Geographical is. She was taking geographical and lopping off the end of it and saying geographic. Because she says geographical, there's that emphasis on graphic. So it was geographic, which was really awkward, TTS. So phonetically, we had to spell out geographic.
Interesting.
And now it works fine.
All right, so let's see if I can get this back correct. Cool. All right, so now up on the screen, we've got an interaction that represents the case where the user comes back and just says the month and the day. And so here we have in our situation, notice instead of just doing birthday unknown here, we've identified what intent. So we're doing the capture birthday intent, but you'll notice we have month, day are known, but year isn't known. And so in this case, we're not like, we're gonna require them to give the year, but we might want to rethink our design. But you can see here, what we're doing is we have, we're giving some context. We're saying, oh, hey, I was born in 2015. What year were you born? And then this is doubled up. Shouldn't be here.
Oops. We put the prompt in the response.
All right, cool. So, what year were you born? And then, she comes back. Then they come back and say 1983. And then at that point, we know everything that we need to know, the month, day, year. And then we come back with the implicit confirmation and close the skill.
And you can easily see that we're going to need another card for the situation where I only gave the month or only gave the day.
Yes.
So
yep.
we have all of our
check that out.
variables.
We have that.
Hey, look at that.
Pretty awesome. And I think I didn't. Yes. Oh no, I doubled up. Again. All right. Make sure I save this. Cool. All right. So we're at 15 minutes until 1, and we still have to build the skill. We're moving at a good pace. I just want to show us that here's what happens when we have two other scenarios. We have the situation where we know their birthday and it's not their birthday. So in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to say welcome back, and there's going to be 219 days. Well, this is at that time that this was done, but you know what I mean. We're going to tell them how many days until their unbirthday or happy unbirthday to you. Close the skill. So we're getting funny, right? So then in our third scenario, the situation, the birthday is known and it is their birthday, so we come back and we wish them a happy birthday. So at this point you might want to think like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had like an APL template that showed like a birthday cake or something that said like happy birthday. Another thing that we might want to think about is like maybe having like some sort of way to monetize this. Like maybe one of the things that we're going to know is we're going to know their birthday. So one potential vector would be to offer them like a daily horoscope or something like that, because you've already got that information.
Yep.
Why don't you provide some more value to that? Or another thing that you might want to think about is what if our user registered their birthday with the skill and forgot to open it on their birthday?
Yep.
That's another scenario. So we need to come back and say, oh, hey, happy belated birthday.
Right. I was going to say you could sign up for reminders of your
Right.
own birthday, but I like your use case better.
I love it. You get a reminder. It's your birthday today. Oh. Cool. So that's our design that we have, and we'll be able to go in depth. Like at the beginning of each stream, I'm actually going to go through and do a review and point out like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to build this part. So tomorrow we're going to deal with actually capturing the slots. Today what we're going to be building is the basic interaction. So we're just going to have our skill wake up and say, hello, welcome to Cakewalk, and then exit. We're not even going to ask for, how many, when they were born. We're just going to, open the skill. And then starting tomorrow, we're actually going to start building out the interaction. And so before I build each piece, we're going to go through the design, and I'm just going to review and say, this is what we're building. We're going to build the piece that handles this part of the design. So you're going to be able to see the whole, end-to-end, thing built out. So this is really, really cool. So with 12 minutes, we're going to go in and build the first part of the Cakewalk interaction. So let's see. If you haven't built a skill before, you'll want to go to developer.amazon.com. I'll share that in the chat. Also, Startup Santana, thanks for wishing us happy birthday in advance.
Also, yes, we have Fred pointing out that geographic is a word. Lots of things use geographic. However, Alexa uses essentially what is in, I think it's Webster, when you go to look up a phonetic pronunciation of a word, geographic doesn't actually exist. So the proper way to refer to my geographic location, it's actually geographical. So for that reason, it also wasn't in Alexa's dictionary. Now it is. We put lots of things in Alexa's dictionary that don't actually exist in like Webster. So there is that. Also sayings in other languages. There's this guy named Jeff Bezos who runs a space travel company, and their motto is Gradatum Ferociter. If you type that into Alexa's straight TTS, the result is hilarious. She's not so great at Latin, Alexa, so we have to massage that to make her pronounce it correctly. So if it's not spelled out phonetically in the dictionary, unless somebody has gone in and added it to Alexa's dictionary, it also doesn't exist.
Right. So
that's why we get those issues, like gradatum ferociter, which is how she says it.
Awesome.
Yep. So geographic is now in Alexa's dictionary.
Nice. All right.
Along with gradatum ferociter.
All right, so we've got 10 minutes, and I know that this section of the course is called like build a skill in 5 minutes. So we've got 10 minutes to build something in 5 minutes, but I also have to wrap up and share some links and stuff with you. So we're gonna move at a little bit of a quicker pace than I would normally work at here, but we're not doing anything too complicated. So basically, gonna be explaining more about how to use the user interface than anything. But once you log in, if you haven't built any skills, if you've built skills, you'll have a list of skills here that you've created. But this particular account that I'm using hasn't have any skills, so I'm just going to click the Create Skill button, and this will take me to a page where I can, with a whole bunch of different knobs and things that I would need to fill out. And so the first thing it wants me to do is pick a name. So I'm just going to call it Cakewalk. And you'll notice here it says choose a model for your skill. There's several different types. There's default, it's selected to custom. We're going to use custom, but there's other different types, like you could do a flash briefing. That's not so much of a skill, more so than you would set up like a feed, maybe like an Atom feed, and you can provide like text and audio. You got smart home skills, music skills. I don't have enough time to go through and talk about each one of these things, but definitely go take a look at them on your own. But in order to do anything sort of custom, in the case of building Cakewalk, you need to use the custom skill. And then at the bottom here, you see we have choose a method to host your skills. You can provision your own or do Alexa hosted. Provisioning your own would allow you to basically choose whatever you want as your backend, including AWS. So you would just provide your Amazon resource name and connect to your backend. But with Alexa hosted, that's going to create everything for us and host it. And so we don't have to log back and forth between two different windows. That's one of the nice advantage that you have over Alexa hosted. There's a learn more here because there's a free tier, and then once you go on that, you have to migrate onto your own. So you can click this learn more link and learn more about when you actually have to start paying for things and move out. So with that selected, we're going to click on Create Skill, and this will go ahead and provision everything that we need.
And we're done.
Almost. Almost. We have to change one thing once this is finished for it to say what we need it to say. So.
And with these skill types too, while we're sitting here waiting,
sure.
They also come with different requirements for certification, and they also service kind of different needs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're right in choosing custom, but it's also important to know, like, baby activity, that's a new one, and I haven't seen that yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it also comes with its own host of requirements for certification and all of that, so read those carefully when you do make a selection that's right for your use case.
All right. Oh, great. Floyd 14 just shared the situational design templates in the cookbook. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Okay, now that we've logged in, there's this big, huge page here with a bunch of different green check marks and stuff. Because we used Alexa hosted, all these check marks got created and filled and turned to green for us, so that makes it easier on us. Otherwise, if you didn't, you'd have to go through and fulfill these all yourself, which would be the invocation name gets created for you, and that's basically going to be Cakewalk. which is the name of the skill. It automatically gets created, set to the invocation name, but they can be separate. You probably don't want them to be separate, but for some skills do, and I don't know any insights why. Maybe it's branding, I guess.
Oh, it has a lot to do with branding. It has a lot to do with how, at least in my world, working with quote-unquote managed partners, people that Amazon really wants to get their skill right. A lot of it does come down to branding or how it's going to sound in marketing. So here's a really fun one. That's a good example of that. Ask My Buddy is a very popular skill actually for the elderly population. And as most of us know, ask is an invocation phrase. So I can ask any skill. The skill name was Ask My Buddy. So the invocation name was actually Ask My Buddy, but you could the invocation was actually My Buddy. So you could say ask my buddy or open ask my buddy and it would work because my buddy was there.
Right.
But the true invocation name of the skill is My Buddy.
Interesting.
So they could market it as just say Alexa ask my buddy, which is a
sense.
lot easier for elderly people to remember than Alexa open ask my buddy or Alexa ask my buddy to alert. It was a lot more elegant that way.
That's a really good example. I'm
Yeah.
gonna steal that now. 'Cause I've always told people like, I don't know why you would want the difference. Now I got.
That's why.
I got a good example. Awesome. Gotta have you on more streams.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go more into detail about the user interface tomorrow when I start building this out. But you'll notice up at the top here we have these different tabs. We've got build, code, test, distribution, certification, and analytics. So build, this is where we would build our interaction model. Code is where we're going to build our code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change the way how Alexa responds. And so that we're going to do in our code. And let me zoom in on this a little bit. So you'll see here we have a launch request handler, and I'll go more into detail about what the different code is and how this is built out. We're running up at the end of time. So be sure to tune in tomorrow. We're going to be streaming at the exact same time tomorrow from 11:45 Pacific Standard Time, or it's Daylight Savings Time, so PDT. Got to get that right. And then we're until 1. So we'll be on the same time tomorrow. And the videos will be available here afterward. So if you miss, you can come back and view it later. So okay, we're going to change this here. If you notice it says welcome, you can say hello or help. Which would you like to try? We're just going to go ahead and delete that. And we're going to say hello. What was we said welcome to Cakewalk, I believe. Let's see, we can look at our nice handy design template. Hello, welcome to Cakewalk. When were you born? All right, so let's do that. Hello, welcome to Cakewalk. When were you born? And I was gonna have it say, that was a piece of cake, but we'll follow our design. So we'll click save.
That would actually be one of those nice variations on the exit message.
There you go. Nice.
Hope your day is a piece of cake.
Cool. So now we're going to click deploy, and this is going to deploy to our Lambda function that is behind our Alexa's hosted setup. And so now it's finished deploying. So now we can actually test this. So let's click the test. And I don't know if the volume for this has been set up. Also, I'll need to turn this on for testing. So I'm going to give you a warning. If you're listening on headphones, I don't know what the volume is going to be like. So
or if it'll be there at all.
Or if it'll be there at all. But this is just a heads up. So hopefully I don't blow your eardrums. So we're going to open the skill by typing in open, Cakewalk. And you could also click and hold the microphone and say, open Cakewalk. But we're just going to type it here. So we'll hit enter. Okay, so she comes back and says, hello, welcome to Cakewalk. When were you born? Cool. So we built the first interaction. Notice I didn't capitalize the welcome and welcome there, and it doesn't really matter.
No.
Feel
she
free
won't
to break.
pronounce it any differently.
Right.
To add emphasis, you would go to one of the SSML tags. There is infinite, there is emphasis, there is volume, all kinds of ways to manipulate that. But when you put commas somewhere, she does pause briefly. So you can forget everything your grammar teacher taught you about commas and just put commas where you intend there to be pauses, and it'll sound really great.
Yes. And that leads us to the end of our stream. And one thing before you go, I want you all to take a look at. I just sent a link to a poll in the Twitch stream. So take a look at that. What we're doing is we're going to be building Cakewalk over this week during Cake Week. And we have come up with a poll did I share the wrong tweet? Yes, I did. Sorry about that.
Did you share something embarrassing?
No. It's still from the Alexa devs, but it's not the poll.
No cat videos.
Yes. No. I didn't rickroll the audience. So it's this one here. It's the second link, and that will take you to. Oops, I gotta switch this over. So you can see here we're running a poll, and vote by 12:15 p.m. On May 31st. And what you're going to do is you're going to be voting for what new feature we add to Cakewalk. So when we finish going through the Cakewalk, the final installment where we're going to actually do the date math to calculate the number of days, we're going to do one of three things. We're either going to add an APL document for a birthday card. We're going to go through, and you get to choose this, or we're going to do in-scale purchasing. Maybe an HTTP web request to get some information, or do the belated birthday wish. So please vote, and whatever you vote, that's what I'm going to try to attempt to finish and complete. In-scale purchasing is going to be pretty tough to get all in one go.
So pick that one. ISP is harder mode.
Yes. So. But yeah, it'll be pretty interesting. And so what we could do with the HTTP web request, like another feature that could be done is like, look up who else, like maybe famous or celebrities were born on your birthday, and be like, oh, you were born on the same day as.
Those are delightful.
Yeah.
I share a birthday with Slash.
Oh, nice. Awesome. That's why you're so awesome.
I guess.
Nice. Okay, so it's 101. For those of you who are tuning in for office hours, we'll be back. I just want to cut the stream and then restart the stream for office hours, so that way we can get like a break in the video. So just sit tight. Thank you again for tuning in, and Alison, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, great.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
If it's anybody's birthday out there, happy birthday.
Yes, the first time I did this like workshop and tested it out with people, I gave my birthday as the example, and someone said, "That's my birthday."
Stop. That's awesome.
The very, very first time. So yeah, I want to get like a sticker that
We're
says,
bound to get a current birthday over the course of the next 4 days.
Yeah, we probably will. Yes.
That's
all right.
Great.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in, and I'll be back in a minute for office hours. So sit tight for those of you who are tuning in for the Tuesday 1 p.m. office hours. All right.
Bye.
Bye.